Greetings and welcome to the Black Flame Podcast, where history and legends collide, where cryptids, the supernatural, and the paranormal run free.
We are your hosts, Dan and John Leonard, and we are here to bring you stories of haunted places, creepy cryptids, and harrowing legends. So sit back and let us guide you through the world of the unexplained.
Tonight we'll be covering the Okanagan Lake Monster and the Gloucester Sea Serpent.
So stick around to learn more about these two legendary cryptids. Lake monsters have always been a part of human history. Perhaps the most famous lake monster of all time is the Loch Ness Monster, but there have been sightings of an unknown creature in the dark waters of Lake Okanagan. Not only have there been sightings of this monster, but it has been reported that it has even killed before. So the question is, what is this monster? Located in the southern interior of British Columbia lies Lake Okanagan, stretching 74 miles in length and 3 miles wide. It is the largest lake in Okanagan Valley, making it the perfect place for a monster to hide. Our story begins with a Native American tribe named the Salish. They are the first people reported to live near the lake, and they are also the first to find out that there is something lurking in the dark waters of Lake Okanagan. The Salish people were afraid of a spirit that lived in the water. They were so afraid that before they went to cross the lake, they would sacrifice small animals to please the spirit, assuring them safe travels while crossing the lake. Their first reported run-in with this monster, however, wouldn't be documented until 1855, when a Métis settler by the name of John McDowell was crossing the lake. He made the crossing several times before, but this time he had his horses tied behind his canoe to get them to the other side. Partway through his crossing, he reported that his horses were pulled under the water. The force was so great that he had to cut the rope to stop the canoe from sinking. McDowell would never get a look at what pulled his horses under. The first sighting of the monster comes from a European settler in the year 1872 by the name of Susan Allison. She stated that she was certain that she had seen a dinosaur in the lake. In 1890, a boat captain was steaming on the lake when he saw a creature about 16 feet in length with the head of a ram and fins like a fish. But after turning his ship towards the creature, it had vanished under the murky waters. In a newspaper article from the Nanaimo Daily, 4 people reported seeing the monster swimming in front of a hotel. All the witnesses described it as having a huge head with 2 humps behind it protruding from the water. The manager of the hotel was one of the witnesses, and he said that it was swimming 150 yards offshore and was speeding in the calm water. Following 1 year later, in 1947, when a number of boaters all saw the same thing at the same time. A snake-like body 30 feet long with 5 undulations separated by an estimated 2 feet of space. Another report comes out when the Okanagan Bridge was being constructed in the 1950s. Construction divers said they saw large animals swimming near them in the water. The divers were not able to identify them. These huge animals even scared some of the divers so much that they would quit and not go on to help finish with the construction. Another report comes from a man by the name of Bill Steswick. In October 1978, Bill was driving from the west side of the lake when a movement in the water caught his attention. Soon after stopping, traffic began to back up. While still looking at the creature, 20 other people joined him in watching this unknown animal. What they saw was a head followed by 3 black humps that trailed roughly 60 meters behind. They would watch the creature swim for almost a minute. Then as fast as it appeared, it disappeared under the water below. While some claim to see a snake-like creature, others claim that they see a large object that looks almost featureless and log-like. A search for Ogopogo was launched in 1991 when a Japanese television network sent out an expedition team armed with high-tech equipment The team will come up empty in finding any hard evidence to suggest that a monster was in the lake. But even years after the search was done, people to this day still claim to see a monster in the lake. On October 13th, 2020, a Canadian resident by the name of Adam Schwartz was vacationing on Lake Okanagan when he spotted and filmed what looked like a multi-humped creature moving just under the surface of the water. Schwartz said that he is certain that there is something in the lake and believes that the monster normally stays in deep water and only surfaces once in a while. Some say that Ogopogo is a large sturgeon. Others claim that it is a species unknown to science. And others will say that it is a spirit that protects the lake. As time goes on and more sightings emerge, the echo of curiosity still rings over the calm waters of Lake Okanagan. And the question still remains, what is the Okanagan Lake Monster?
So really, it's a lake serpent.
Some say that it looks like a serpent, like a snake, and others say that it looks just like, what are those, a plesiosaur?
Yeah.
It looks kind of like that sometimes, like almost like an underside of a boat.
That's what I was kind of wondering, too, because I didn't really know a whole lot about Ogopogo. I'd seen some supposed footage of it, but I had never seen, or I didn't know that much about it, I guess, as far as what it was supposed to be. But that was something I was going to draw on, was that it seems like most of your lake monsters, specifically like in lakes, tend to be plesiosaur-like creatures for most people. Like, obviously Loch Ness Monster, that's what everyone claims that is.
Yeah. That's very few with Ogopogo. And just to clear it up, Ogopogo is the name of the so-called monster of the Okanagan Lake. But most people see like a serpent. And there's even a statue of a little fake Ogopogo they put out. You can see a bunch of them up near the town, near Okanagan Lake.
That's cool.
They got a couple of them.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of their tourist industry there.
Oh, it is. Yeah. But Native Americans have always been afraid, for some reason, of this lake in particular. They would sacrifice chickens or small animals before they crossed because they believed that Ogopogo, and they had a different name for it. I'm not even going to try to say the name of it. They believed that it was a protector, a spirit protecting the lake.
Gotcha.
And that they would offer a sacrifice every time before they crossed to ensure them that they would get across the lake safe.
That always interests me, too, when you have a Native American legend or just an old, legend like that, where they took it seriously enough to sacrifice animals to it. And then you have modern-day sightings as well that tend to back up, possibly thousands of years of sightings, basically. But they view it more as a spiritual creature then, and not as much as a flesh and blood, part of the animal kingdom, I guess.
Yeah, that's how they saw it. Yeah,
they didn't see it like the same thing as a buffalo.
No, from what I could find out, no, they didn't have anything physical that they drew to make it look like or anything like that. Nothing like that. Nothing physical evidence. But it's interesting that the first documented report comes out in 1855 of this weird serpent-like thing.
That is odd.
Well, actually, the first documented report is when the horses got pulled under.
Right. That's a crazy story.
Yeah, and apparently he had to cut the line so his canoe wouldn't sink.
That's so wild.
But the second report is Susan Allison. She was the first person to see it. And she swore that she saw a dinosaur, in her own words.
Now, that was another question I had, too. Did you find out if, how old the lake was, whether it was like a glacial lake, like it was created during the Ice Age, or has it been around for,
I don't know. I don't know, but I do know, like, the deepest part of the lake is 800-some feet deep.
Damn.
So it's a big lake.
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Because that's what a lot of the, I think Champ is kind of the same way in Lake Champlain, where I think it's one of the oldest lakes in North America. And that's the theory behind Champ, is that when basically they think that the lake was connected to the sea, and that it's very possible that something could have gotten landlocked in there and that it's, basically survived through the Ice Age and through, so it's essentially a dinosaur, which I guess is, that's what people claim to see with Ogopogo.
I guess, but I mean, most people claim to see like a big snake, like a serpent.
Yeah.
The most claims come out to be like a multi-humped, like some of them said.
Well, that's always gets me too with a lot of the lake and sea monsters. Is like when you're seeing humps.
I have a theory for that one.
Yeah.
Because I've seen otters a lot in the wild.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen a lot of otters at one time. It was 8 or 10 of them. Really early in the morning, we were hunting really early in the morning, so the sun wasn't up yet. And we couldn't tell what they were. And it was otters just going like this. So you couldn't see the whole otter, but they were just breaking the surface and going back down.
Right.
I wonder if they're seeing a couple otters swimming and just coming up and going, like breaching like a dolphin does almost.
Yeah.
That's my theory, but I don't know if they have otters that live there.
I would think they have something similar to it.
You would think.
But
it is a lake, though.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true, but it's a big one.
Yeah.
I don't know. Beavers.
Yeah.
But if it's not, then I would have to think that, because like whenever I hear something about like a humped sea creature, you don't really see, like the only animal we see in the wild with humps is a camel, really. Like you don't see anything else that has like multiple humps on its back. So I would have to think that anything like that would, unless it's some undiscovered creature, is probably, like you're saying, even if it is a big snake-like unknown creature, it's probably undulating up and down out of the water. That's what I always assumed.
That's what I assumed too.
Even if it is one big creature, especially if it's snake-like. Like you said, some people say it just looks like a log.
Some people say, yeah, that it doesn't have any features. It just looks like a big floating log.
Did it look like, or were there any reports of it out of the water that you could find?
You mean like totally out of the water?
Yeah, like up on land, like it was sunning itself or something.
No.
Okay.
No, all the accounts I could find were strictly water based. And some even say that they've seen horns on it before, like little giraffe horn looking things on its head.
Whoa.
Yeah. And a lot of them say that it has the head of a sheep or a ram or something like that, a cow.
Right.
Some kind of strange looking head.
And see, I think out of all of them, like it's easy to, especially without even seeing it, but just hearing about the reports, it's real easy to try to rationalize them and say like, well, they probably just saw a big line of otters, or it was a sturgeon, or something like that. But like the very first report of horses being pulled onto the water in a lake by something,
yeah,
whether maybe they got caught on a log when they were going through, and it, they just got stuck down there, and it seemed like, but like there's nothing else in that lake that would be big enough. There's no large carnivore in that water, I would think, that would pull an entire horse under. Like, because sturgeon wouldn't even do that.
No,
and
they get big.
Yeah.
White sturgeon get to be, I think it's white sturgeon, they get to be over like 20 feet long if they let them grow, if they don't die. But they're not meat eaters.
Yeah.
They are, but they eat crustaceans, and they don't have teeth. They don't go after prey like sharks do.
Yeah.
They're
bottom feeders.
Yeah. Crabs, crustaceans, stuff like that.
Right. But I mean, obviously people are seeing something, and that's one where they definitely like still regularly see things. Like you had the report from 2020.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those ones are always interesting because it's an ongoing thing. And I don't know. I think it's unlikely, I would say, that it's anything unknown to science, but that wouldn't be very scientific to say in the first place, because you got to leave the possibility open.
Yeah, I mean, that Japanese television show, they went looking for it and they couldn't find anything. They had ROVs, and that doesn't mean anything, but
no.
Where are you going to go in a lake?
Yeah, there's only so much room there, especially with, and it's the same thing like with the Loch Ness Monster, where,
Now the Loch Ness does connect to the ocean.
Right.
Very thinly, it does.
And they say there are cave systems that or under the water there too that something could hide in.
There are cave systems in this one too, in this lake too.
And see, I think that leaves open a large possibility. And maybe it is something that's easily, or something that we already know about. Like, what if it's some unknown giant species of eel that likes to hide in crevices and stuff?
Gets horses.
Yeah, a big one.
Well, the other thing is the water's cold. It's British Columbia. You got to think that too. Not many eels can stand that cold of water.
Yeah, but I mean, if they evolved there, it's possible. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. I mean, fish live there, right? Is there a plentiful food source for anything large there?
Yeah, there's a few species of fish, but it's nothing outrageous. There aren't a lot of species of fish.
Maybe that's because they all got eaten.
Well, then the animal will die.
Well, maybe
Find
it's
a body.
Vegetarian now. That's why I had no more horses that got pulled under. He's a 2021 Ogopogo. I don't know. I don't want to dismiss anything.
I know.
It's because that for one thing, takes all the fun out of it. And when you really try to do a deep dive and analyze something that's in a landlocked lake, because almost always what you end up with is, well, it's probably not there, but we still don't know.
No, we don't. But just looking at the picture, I haven't found any pictures or videos that caught my eye and said, like, that could be something. Most of the time, it looks like a wave, or it looks like something like a log, maybe some other kind of animal.
That's the thing, too, because I know when growing up as a kid here on the bay, we've got Chessie, which there were alleged sightings of. I feel like I want to do like a little mini thing. You can't even stretch that out into a whole episode.
Well, I mean, it's a manatee.
No, not the one video. The one that I forget the name of the family that shot it. We're going to bring this up at some point. But there were alleged sightings of a sea serpent in the bay, which is connected to the ocean. It's not out of the realm of possibility something did come up into the bay. And there's allegedly one string of footage that was actually verified by the Smithsonian Institution as, legitimate. It wasn't doctored in any way. And they think there is one single live living creature on this thing, and it's weird looking. It looks like a serpent with a big head. But I know growing up as a kid, seeing that, and I was always had my eyes peeled on the water, and every now and then you'd see, just an odd wake come by that was probably just left over from boats running down,
That's the thing, too. You go, especially nowadays, you go to Lake Okanagan and you know of Ogopogo, your eyes are going to be peeled already. So any little wake, you're going to be like, oh, was that it? You're going to do that thing, that could have been it. I think your mind tends to shift towards it being there for the most part. Now, there are some skeptic stories of people that didn't believe it, and now they do after supposedly seeing it.
And that's interesting, too.
Yeah.
I always like those. Because you get somebody...
I think those are people deep down I think those are only people deep down, they don't want to believe it. And they tell people they don't, and then they finally see it, and then they're just like, I believe it.
Yeah.
I think
they were just
really
waiting for permission to...
Yeah, they just don't want to sink in.
Yeah, I don't know. It's fun.
Oh, yeah, it is.
That's the bottom line for this kind of story, is that there's still could be unknown creatures out there.
I mean, there are,
and,
no doubt.
Oh, right. And who's to say that they're not in Lake Okanagan?
I mean, could be.
I'm not a scientist.
I'm not either. I'm far from it. But the other thing is the range of how big it is. Some say it's 16 feet. Others say it's up to 60 feet long.
Holy crap.
Yeah.
Well, and you would think if it is a real flesh and blood creature, it's reproducing. There has to be at least a small population of them, so his size would definitely vary.
Unless it's one. Because sharks, I know Greenland sharks have been reported to live over 400 years.
Yeah, but you're talking all the way back thousands of years with the Native Americans, I would assume.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, maybe there's been, this is the last one, but it's been here for 400 years. Since, like, maybe that's the one that pulled down the horses.
That's
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I hadn't thought about that.
Because I know a lot of fish tend to live long.
Yeah. And I mean, the range and size estimates too. I mean, that's especially when you're dealing with something on the water. It's part of it's under the water. If nobody's seen the whole thing out of the water, you don't know how big it is.
And then the water's a hard judge. If you don't have anything like a buoy or something to go by or another boat, it's hard to judge how big something is on the water because it's flat. It's flat surface. You don't have any trees. You don't have any bearings to go by.
Yeah, you don't even know. You could be looking at the other edge of the lake, and you don't even know how far away it is. So how do you know how big something is that's swimming in the middle of it?
Yeah. I think that just has to do with the big misconception from like 15, 16 feet to 60 feet.
Yeah,
that's a big difference.
It's a big difference.
I don't know. I know there's probably something there that we just don't know, but I don't think it's a serpent, per se.
Maybe it's some kind of weird, giant water snake. Or like I say, eel.
But then it would have... So, eels and snakes, their bodies move laterally. Like that. This thing is talking about multi-humped. So, the whole bone structure would have to be different for a snake or an eel.
I mean, snakes and eels can, or at least snakes can move like that.
But they don't move like that on purpose. When they're swimming, you've seen snakes when they swim.
Yeah.
You can't stay on top of the water and do that almost. Almost.
Yeah, but if this is some weird, undiscovered
but
subspecies, it could swim.
That's why I'm saying it's like
it's all conjecture.
An eel or a snake doesn't... Plus, I don't think they have any snakes that big, man.
That's a
cold.
big snake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only snakes they have close to that size live in the Amazon, where it's warm weather.
Right. I don't know. I think if I had to put my money on anything, it would be some sort of large eel. If it was something still out there undiscovered, I think personally I got to cross dinosaur off the list.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go put all my chips in on giant eel.
I'm going to say it's some kind of big sturgeon or something, because most of the reports that you see are just wakes. I'm going to say it's sturgeon or otters or beavers. I think it's a mix of things, honestly. I'm not going to say it's one thing because there are different reports.
Right.
But I think it's a couple different things that people are seeing.
Yeah, and I mean, like you say, even the ones with the log, I've seen it myself.
Oh yeah, you see a log and you're like, what is that?
Yeah, well, and especially when it gets caught in a current.
Yeah,
and it looks like it's moving. There's the illusion of it, even though
the log is heavy, so it's not moving as fast as the current.
Or even if it's hung up on something, even if it's absolutely stationary and the current is moving around it, it looks like it's moving to your eye. If you're not like really trying to get a reference point to see if it's moving, it looks like something swimming through the water.
And then if you're moving, then that's another thing too. If you're on a boat or even if you're on land and you're moving, if you're not standing still, it's really hard to tell if that thing's moving or not.
Yeah. Yeah, no, the effects just get magnified then.
Yeah. But I think it's just a lot of different things people are seeing. And like I say, it's also part of when you go there, you're going to look for it. It's like going to Loch Ness and looking for it. Like, you might see a wave funny and then think you saw it just because you're there. You know, it just has that feel to it.
It's already in your mind.
Yeah.
You're
predisposed.
predisposed.
Senses are heightened to it.
Right.
Yeah. But still a fun story.
Yeah. Still fun to chit chat about anyway.
Yeah. This has been the Okanagan Lake Monster.
Stick around to hear about the Gloucester sea serpent. Since the beginning of mankind, people have stared out over the ocean and thought about what might lie beyond the horizon. The vast expanse has never ceased to capture the imagination, spawning tales of untouched land, endless riches, and the promise of opportunity. But while the seas can be a source of hope for many, they can also inspire our deepest fears, because the ocean conceals not only what's beyond the horizon, but also what might be right below our feet. Stories of monstrous creatures lurking in the depths waiting to take us under can be found all throughout history. They stay hidden, just beyond our mind's eye. That is, until they breach the surface and become more than just the ponderings of a wandering mind. They become real. This is exactly what seems to have happened in the case of the Gloucester sea serpent. Gloucester, Massachusetts is a seaside town, mainly known as a summer vacation destination, and its significant role in the American fishing industry. The harbor was first mapped by Samuel de Champlain in the early 1600s and was originally home to the Pawtucket Native Americans. By 1623, the English established the Cape Ann settlement, a precursor of the Massachusetts Bay Colony. The settlement wouldn't last long, however. The soil in the area was not ideal for growing crops, making life hard on the early settlers, and within 3 years, everything was taken down and moved to what is now modern-day Salem. The harbor was too valuable as a port, though, and as more and more people began to populate America, the area was slowly resettled and formally incorporated as Gloucester in 1642. From there it grew into what it is today. Over the years since its inception, though, Gloucester seems to have been home to more than just Native American tribes and English settlers, and ships weren't the only thing found moving through the waters. The first known sighting of what has come to be known as the Gloucester sea serpent came in 1638 by a group of 4 men sailing by Cape Ann. The crew consisted of 2 Englishmen and 2 Native Americans. According to their report, they witnessed a large snake-like beast coiled up on a rock by the cape. One of the Englishmen raised their rifle to shoot the animal, but the Native Americans warned them against this action, saying that if he didn't kill the beast outright, their lives would be in danger. From there, sightings logged in historical records are few and far between until the 1800s, when it seems the creature became a lot less shy, and sightings exploded, and it became a media sensation all over New England. It all kicked off in August of 1817, when 2 women on the shore and 1 captain on the water saw the creature swimming into Gloucester Harbor. Just days later, a local woman said she saw the creature sunbathing on the rocky shoreline before disappearing into the water. According to a newspaper article written that same month, the witnesses described a large, snake-like creature with a turtle-like head as large as a horse's, and a body as big around as a barrel, with estimates in length coming in anywhere from 40 to 150 feet long. They also noted what looked like joints along its back, which, and I quote, appeared like a row of 10-gallon kegs, and to others like barrels. They said it moved through the water with erratic serpentine behavior. Reports continued to flood in, all seemingly describing the same creature, whether they saw it from land or from the water. Some claimed to see it feeding on fish. Others thought it looked as though it was just playing on the surface, but all of them agreed that regardless of what its intentions were, they knew because of its size that it could be a threat, and they would need to get rid of it. An account from a carpenter aboard a ship stated that he aimed a rifle at the creature's head and fired. He was sure he made contact, but it seemed to have little to no effect, because just as he did so, the animal turned towards them, looking as though it would ram the vessel. Just before it reached them, though, it dove below and resurfaced on the other side about 100 yards away. When bullets alone seemed they wouldn't take the creature down, the people of Gloucester began formulating a plan to rid themselves of the beast. The idea was to craft a series of strong nets that would ensnare the creature, leaving it immobilized and vulnerable to a multi-strike attack. It appears the plan was unsuccessful, though, and they came up empty-handed, but hopes of at least identifying the creature weren't totally dashed, thanks to a rather curious discovery made on a nearby beach. In September of 1817, 2 young boys were walking along the shoreline close to where the creature was sighted just days before, when they came across what looked like a baby serpent. The mini beast was killed, and subsequently detailed in a letter published in a newspaper at the time. It was described as being about 3.5 feet long, 3 inches in circumference, brown on top and cream-colored on the bottom, with those strange lumps running down its back. 32, to be exact. The theory was that the larger serpent seen in the area days before was there hatching its young, or giving birth. After the quote-unquote baby serpent was killed, it was examined by the Linnaean Society and given a proper Latin name for a new genus, Scoliophis atlanticus, and taken on tour for the world to see. A short time later, however, it was discovered that the carcass was actually that of a common black snake with tumors beneath the skin along its back. This humiliated the Linnaean Society, and I'm sure it frustrated a lot of local residents who thought they finally captured one of the beasts. But that didn't seem to have any effect on the influx of reports. All in all, there were 18 recorded sightings in 1817 alone, with many of them being witnessed by entire groups of people. Some even claimed to have seen the serpent multiple times throughout the year. In 1818, an experienced whaling captain named Richard Rich was hired to hunt down and harpoon the beast. He would wait for a report to come in and then jump aboard his ship to track it down, and after multiple failed attempts, he finally laid eyes on the beast. With his harpoon at the ready, the ship intercepted the animal. The harpoon was flung into the water, and believe it or not, it hit its target. After a long wrestling match with the animal, the men were able to pull it aboard the ship. Only, what they hauled out of the water turned out not to be a giant sea serpent, but a, still albeit large, bluefin tuna. It was thought that the big creature had broken the surface, leaving a large wake that resembled the serpent's back humping through the water. Captain Rich never would actually succeed in catching the so-called Gloucester sea serpent, but reports continued to come in sporadically through the 1800s. They never would reach the fever pitch of that exciting year of 1817, though. Multiple theories have been brought forth in an attempt to explain the sightings. Some say it may have been a simple case of misidentification. Maybe just people seeing a pod of dolphins in a line breaking the surface. Others state that the whole thing may have been one big publicity hoax by the paper that fueled a state of mass hysteria where anything out of the ordinary would suddenly become a sea serpent sighting. While we may never truly know what happened, the stories are still curious, nonetheless. The argument over the veracity of these claims can really be boiled down to two questions, and they're both interesting to ponder. Are people so mystified by the seemingly infinite bounds of our world's oceans that their imaginations become just as limitless? Or is there really something truly monstrous out there in the murky depths, waiting to rear its ugly head? The answers aren't necessarily mutually exclusive, but I like to think the answer to the latter might just be yes.
So what do you think it is?
A sea serpent.
I think it's some kind of, like you said, misidentification. The first thing that struck me was, when you said that it was sitting on rocks, sunning itself.
Yeah.
First thing comes to mind is a snake.
Right.
Reptile, warming itself in the sun. It's cold-blooded.
Yeah, but this is a big snake, if it is a snake. In Massachusetts.
Yeah, would you say 60 to 100 feet long? 40 to 150 feet long?
Yeah. Estimates range very widely. And it goes by, from report to report. And even some people, that's the cool thing about this, too, is I found so many newspaper articles from the 1800s on this. And it was like a ongoing thing for a long time, all throughout the year, or pretty much from August on. And it was just big news all over New England. But, yeah, in those reports, some people would say that, yeah, we think it's this long, but we don't really know because we only saw, basically, they were measuring from, the head to the last hump. And they were just guesstimating. Now, most of the sightings that come from the water were seasoned.
That guy was a whaler.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There were people, and he had reportedly seen it before. He gathered a whole crew together of people that had seen it before, supposedly. And that's it. It was seen in and out of the water. That's the weird thing. So it's amphibious, obviously.
That's why it tells me it's some kind of snake.
Yeah, but what? Something that's that big? That's way bigger than anything. Maybe it was brought over from Africa or something. There are stories of not big, but animals stowing away on ships, basically, from other countries making their way here. But That's huge, man.
You also got to think that's cold for a snake.
Yeah, that's cold
From
water.
Africa?
Yeah.
A snake wouldn't be able to survive that water. That's too cold.
Well, I mean, if it was some kind of like giant sea snake from Africa.
A giant sea snake?
Yeah. Maybe it's
From
not
Africa?
From maybe it's not from Africa. I don't know. I'm just saying if it, or even I guess if it,
It's very specific.
yeah. But I guess it doesn't have to be from Africa. But a
Yeah, I
giant,
mean, there's a lot of seas, man.
yeah. And if it's in the ocean already, there's no reason why it couldn't be here. It's kind of like how you can see whales pretty much all over the Atlantic Ocean. They go all over the place, like because it's the ocean.
But like I say, snakes hibernate
Yeah.
in the cold. They do. Even snakes that live around here, they hibernate.
But that's the thing too. There were reports all through, October and December, November.
That's what I'm saying.
So it couldn't have been a snake.
I'm just saying I don't think it's a snake from Africa. That's all I'm saying. Like I don't think it's one that came off of a ship. I don't think it's one that came off of a ship from somewhere else.
Well, I guess it couldn't have been if it was 150 feet long and as big around as a barrel.
Now I think people are just misidentifying that again.
There's something to these. Like they very specifically talk about like seeing the head. Some people say that they say that it moved like a snake sometimes. Sometimes it would move laterally. Sometimes it would hump up out of the water. But they also said that it looked like it had joints along its back, which is a weird way of like, when you say hump, you picture a hump. When they say joint, I picture like a peak. You know what I mean? Like some kind of weird lump.
Well, that's like the encounter that those boys had on the beach of that 3-foot long snake.
Yeah.
That they found, and there was a black snake with tumors.
Yeah. But it wasn't 150 feet long, which I think that's a very exaggerated.
That's stretching it. Because how long is a blue whale?
100 feet. That's the biggest animal ever.
I was going to say.
Only
I don't think 150 feet's quite there.
Yeah, no.
I think we would know about this thing if it was 150 feet long.
Yeah.
There'd have to be something left over from that thing.
Here's an interesting report that I just pulled up and put my talking points here. So this is an early account from the 1800s. And I forget who this is coming from, but it's the whole quote. His color is dark brown with white under his throat. His size could not be accurately ascertained, but his head is about 3 feet in circumference, flat, and much smaller than its body. We did not see his tail, but from the end of the head to the farthest protuberance was not far from 100 feet. I speak with a degree of certainty, being much accustomed to measure and estimate distances and length. I counted 14 bunches on his back. The first one, say 10 or 12 feet from its head, and the others, say, about 7 feet apart. Sorry. They decreased in size towards the tail. These bunches were sometimes counted with and sometimes without a glass, which is like a telescope, I assume. Mm-hmm. Mr. Malborn counted 13, Mr. Blake 13 and 14, and the boatman the same number. His motion was partly vertical and partly horizontal, like that of freshwater snakes. I have been much acquainted with snakes in our interior waters. His motion was the same. So, very snake-like.
Yeah.
And its movements, appearance, I would say even the head. You know, like how snakes, especially like a viper or something with a really exaggerated wide head, compared to its body, it's not round.
Yeah.
Then you had some people saying it was like a turtle head. So it's very, like they saw the head of the thing, if they're telling the truth. It doesn't sound like they saw dolphins to me,
No, but I don't know what else it could be.
Some unidentified fish. I mean, it
is coming in from the ocean too. So.
Yeah, that's the thing too. It's a
could be
endless world of possibility.
Yeah.
That's why I think there really could be something more to that. And they say there's a theory out there that there haven't been really any modern day sightings necessarily. And it's kind of weird because they saw this thing not only in Gloucester, obviously, like you say, it's in the ocean, so they saw it all up and down the East Coast, basically, but it was seen to be really centered in Gloucester. And they say that as commercial fishing in the area was on the rise, basically, that's when you started to see less and less of the creature.
Yeah.
And so they think maybe we were depleting its food source, and so it migrated to a different location. It's a theory, but I think out of a lot of different lake monsters and sea serpents, because of the numerous accounts that seemed very detailed to me, it was either a big, case of mass hysteria, or something was there. People say they would see it playing in the water like 20 feet from shore. They would see it up on land. They would see it. It's kind of indicative of something being there,
Yeah. For the reports, do any of the reports come from anyone who worked for the newspaper?
No.
Do you know of?
Not that I know of. All of them are coming secondhand to the newspaper. So they're hearing them, they're being reported, and then the newspaper does a story on them. And most of the stories that I found weren't even from Gloucester. They were being relayed from Gloucester to Boston or to Pittsfield. So it was, like I say, it was big news. It was usually found in the section of the newspaper. It seemed like back then they would have, their main newspaper. Yeah.
See page A12.
They basically did for like 1808 or 1817.
17, yeah.
Because it was like almost it was crazy. There's so many reports of this thing. It's nuts. And even talking about, like, there was one specifically where the story was from Salem, and they were saying that the people in Gloucester were working on a plan to catch it. That's where that whole story came from, with the nets and everything.
Yeah.
So it was just really widespread. It was huge. It was all over the place. And it's something that I really didn't know about when we were younger or anything. I never heard anything about it. But it really is like your classic sea serpent. What you think of a sea serpent, that's what this thing seemed to be. Now, one thing I hadn't thought about until today were oarfish. I think that's what they're called.
Yeah, oarfish.
They're real long, snake-like looking.
They're funky looking things if you've never seen one.
And they get big.
Yeah, they get big. But
they don't really fit the description.
No, they don't get on land, and they're not big around. They're not barrel-shaped. They're
real thin.
Yeah, like a LY.
Yeah, that's what these, they said that the people that saw it feeding on fish, it was chasing after a school of LY. And they actually saw it open its mouth. They were watching it, like, eat, which is just weird. They see it swimming along with its head up out of the water, like snakes will do every now and then.
Yeah.
It's really, like, it seems legit if you believe the accounts wholeheartedly. I think there's a lot of, the size, again, the judgment of the size of it is iffy. But
even 40 feet.
That's
a stretch too.
I don't know. I mean,
the biggest anacondas there are 30 feet.
Right, which that's
and
not
pythons.
That in the realm of when you're talking about 150 feet, from 30 to 40 isn't that big a jump.
But those are anacondas down the Amazon. We're talking about cold waters of Gloucester.
Yeah, and there are sea snakes that live in the water, not in Massachusetts that we know of, but they live in the Atlantic Ocean.
Oh, they do,
and it's chilly.
They're not that big.
But what if there is a species that at least used to get that big? I know it's really not that long ago in the grand scheme of things, but there was one report too of what people thought was the Gloucester sea serpent washed up on shore in 1970. That was the kind of the most recent specific reference to the Gloucester sea serpent that's been made, really, that I could find. And when it washed up, so many people showed up and like hacked parts of it off as like souvenirs that there was nothing really left to analyze, so they couldn't identify it. And DNA back then wasn't really a thing.
Yeah.
So kind of a bummer. That would have been really cool. But just the way that you can track it through history in the papers is interesting on its own, because it's kind of like you get to relive the hype, and you get to see in people's own words like what was going on. And like I say, if the people are telling the truth, it seems like there's something there. And I'm sure that a lot of those, like the sea captain, Richard Rich, who was trying to harpoon it, thought that he had it. And it turned out to just be a big tuna.
Yeah.
Which, like, I could see if all you're seeing is, like, what looks like a big head and then humps in the water, I could see how a tuna could be misidentified as that if it was real close to the surface.
Yeah.
But
especially since they swim in schools.
Right.
You might see a couple of them swimming towards the top,
Yeah, and they get huge.
Oh, they do.
Real big. So I'm sure there's quite a bit of misidentification out there as well. But the reports of it, for one thing, eating the LY with its mouth open, and the reports of it swimming with its head up out of the water, like some people would say it was like 7 feet out of the water, that's not anything that we know of today.
Yeah.
There's nothing we haven't classified anything that does that. So what was it? I think if the reports are accurate, it's got to be some kind of large sea snake.
I would assume it's got to be some kind of snake because it suns itself apparently.
Right.
It has to be some kind of reptile. Cold-blooded, at least.
Yeah. And something that breathes air.
Yeah.
And can
But the other weird thing is that it doesn't hibernate. Cold-blooded reptiles to hibernate.
Right.
Turtles, alligators, crocodiles, even frogs hibernate. And they're amphibians. Snakes. Yeah. All of them.
But not sea snakes.
But do they move to warmer water?
I don't know.
Tell me that Gloucester in December.
Yeah, it's pretty nasty.
Far from warm, I can guarantee you that.
Hey, maybe because it's real big, it doesn't need. Maybe it can withstand cooler temperatures. I don't know. That probably doesn't make any sense because they don't have any.
They can't.
Yeah, they don't generate their own body heat.
Yeah. Which is the weird. That right there hangs me up. Like it can't. It sounds like a snake, but it can't be at the same time.
Well, and that's the thing too, is all the stories of it eating the fish, seeing it with its mouth open and with its head up out of the water, they could very easily just be either, we'll say, enhanced sightings, where like maybe they saw something there. Oh man, he was huge. It's a fish story.
Yeah,
it just keeps getting bigger and bigger every time you tell it, and it could have been sensationalized by the media as well.
I think that had a lot to do with it because it seemed like, especially the year 1817, for some reason, was a big year for it. Why just that one year? I think it was just trying to. I think someone saw something, and then the newspaper took advantage of that.
Yeah.
I think a few people saw a few things, and then the newspaper took hold of it, and then mass hysteria took over.
Yeah, because I think it would have to be a mix of the two because of.
Because everything stems from something.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Unless all of these reports were completely fabricated by the paper, I think it very easily could have started out, like you say, with someone seeing something weird and then it getting into the paper. And then as soon as people knew about it, like we were talking about with Ogopogo, it was already in their minds then. And so anything weird that they saw was automatically a sea serpent.
Yeah, I mean, you talked about, like, in 1638, the Native Americans saw it, too.
Yeah.
So I think someone saw something. But then I think the media just, like I say, took advantage of it.
And I was really digging to try to find a reference from the Pawtucket Native Americans, too, because that one sounded like they had dealt with this before. He was like, look, don't shoot at that thing. If you don't kill it, we're screwed. And so I couldn't find any tie to their lore with specifically like a sea serpent, which was kind of disappointing.
Now, see, I wonder if it was some kind of snake, some kind of big snake, and they said, don't shoot that or else we're in deep shit. What if that's just the Native Americans? Like, what if that's just a big snake? It's not a crazy-sized snake. It's just a big snake. And, of course, people from England are like, what is that? Yeah, but then the Native Americans are very spiritual, like Ogopogo. They were sacrificing small chickens and small animals to the spirit of the lake so they could cross. So maybe they associate bad luck with this kind of big snake that just happens to be pretty big, you know?
Yeah, where the threat in their minds is just as much a spiritual threat as a physical one, because that would be my defense, is that if it was just a even say you saw the biggest anaconda in the world up on the shore and you're on a ship going by and you point a rifle at it, like, I mean, I guess I would stop you and be like, why the fuck are you killing that thing? But like, not like, man, if you miss that thing, it's going to come get this boat.
Yeah, you'd think so, wouldn't you?
Because that's what it sounded like.
Yeah.
They were saying.
But I think the Native Americans were more spiritual about it.
That's I hadn't thought about it from that angle. That's a good lens to look at it through. You're probably right.
They're very, very spiritual like that.
Yeah.
Very one with nature, you know?
But still, it was enough for them to report that they saw.
Well, yeah, I mean, 1638, like I say, you're an Englishman coming over and you see a big snake. You don't see those over in England.
Yeah, but what kind of big snake would have been up in Massachusetts?
I don't know. Maybe it was just, I don't know.
Because we don't.
I had to look up kind of snakes they have in Massachusetts.
Well, obviously they have black snakes, but like they don't have pythons. Like there's nothing like the biggest snake probably I bet on the East Coast is. I'm gonna find this out.
I don't know. The East Coast, no, you can't do that. Florida. Those crazy people down in Florida let their snakes go, and then they grow to be like 12-foot pythons.
Largest snakes in Massachusetts is the black rat snake. Grows up to 101 inches.
Look up.
So that's like, what? Oh, I'm so bad at math. It's like 10-ish feet long. All right, hang on. I have to do my math now. It's bad.
It's a big rat snake.
Divided by 12. It's like 8.5 feet.
That's a big snake.
Yeah, but not like it wouldn't have been. You probably wouldn't have even seen it from the shore
but
unless
back
you were
in
right up on it.
1638, I bet they were bigger back then, man. I bet those 10-foot or 8-foot snakes were bigger back then. It's like the oysters back then that the Native Americans talked about it here at the Bay. They were huge.
Yeah, but that's
because
because
was more plentiful back then. So I bet the snakes were bigger too.
I don't know.
I bet.
Because like an oyster's just going to keep on growing unless somebody comes and picks it up and eats it. A snake has
snakes keep growing until they die.
Yeah, right? But they're not being killed off by people, like oysters.
So they grow bigger. What are you trying to say?
I mean, they're not. I don't know. Like
they just keep growing.
Us back then, I don't know, because we're not actively going out there and killing snakes now. Or I mean, I guess some people are, but like
I never said you were.
But so. I just don't think they would have been that large. I'm in the camp of I think this was something.
Yeah, but all I'm saying is, look at the oysters nowadays versus what they apparently used to look like. Why wouldn't the snakes be bigger? It was less people, there was more animals to eat, it was just more things, more life around that was natural. It's just the snakes almost had to be bigger.
I guess.
But I think that's what the Native Americans saw. And then someone saw something too, and then, like I say, I think the media took it over.
Yeah. I think that's the most likely explanation if you're going to come at it from a super rational perspective. But
yeah.
If, like I say, if the reports are accurate and true, then something was going on. There was some kind of big old sea snake or something, and I really want that to be true.
Yeah, I mean, it would be cool, but we'll never know.
I guess not.
No, we won't.
Sad.
It's like a lot of things in this world.
Nobody knows.
It's a lot of stuff we cover in this podcast. No one knows.
It's kind of just all conjecture, I guess.
It is.
Except for the PGF. That's real.
So you think.
Yeah.
And the fact that you call it the PGF, you talk about it so much that you shortened the Patterson-Gimlin footage to PGF.
That's the lingo in the Squatching communities. That's not just me. That's the PGF. That's the term. You'll come around. While there haven't been many modern sightings of note, that doesn't mean the creature is gone for good. So the next time you're taking a dip in the ocean off New England, make sure you keep your eyes peeled, because you just might be the next witness of the Gloucester sea serpent. This concludes tonight's episode of the Black Flame Podcast. Check us out on Facebook and Instagram at the Black Flame Podcast.
Be sure to come back next week for a new episode. And remember, stay spooky.